1.23 trillion for the health sector in financial year 2026-2027. The funding will focus on number 1, maternal and child health, 2, nutrition improvement, 3, expanded immunization, 4, prevention and treatment of non-communicable diseases, 5, provision of essential medicines, 6, strengthening specialized healthcare services, 7, improving emergency response systems, 8, exploring feasible pathways towards universal health coverage. I now come to water and sanitation. Mr. Speaker, access to clean and safe water remains fundamental to public health. Human dignity and economic productivity. Government has therefore continued investing heavily in water supply and sanitation infrastructure across the country. Access to improved water sources continues to expand, with 71% of households now having access. Coverage stands at 68% in rural areas and 74.5% in urban areas. Mr. Speaker, during financial year 2025-2026, safe water access was extended to 553 villages. Over 200 large solar-powered water and sanitation systems, several public sanitation facilities, and fecal sludge treatment plants were completed in several districts. In addition, a number of urban water systems were expanded. Government has allocated Uganda shillings 1.013 trillion in financial year 2026-2027 to further expand access to safe water and sanitation services across the country. The objective is to ensure universal access to safe water and sanitation services. I now come to education, skills, and sports. Mr. Speaker, education remains the most powerful instrument for social mobility and long-term economic transformation. During the financial year 2025-2026, the following milestones have been achieved in the education sector. 1, in order to expand access to education, government continued financing universal primary education, UPE, and universal secondary education, USE. Approximately 9.52 million learners benefited from UPE, while about 995,116 learners benefited from universal secondary education and universal post-O-level education and training. 2, government completed construction of 90 additional seed secondary schools, expanded 54 existing schools, and operationalized 259 seed schools. 3, in preparation for AFCON 2027, Hoima Stadium has been completed, upgrades to Nambole Stadium are progressing well, and other required tournament facilities remain on schedule. Further construction of Akibwa Stadium is on schedule. Number 4, government has intensified investment in STEM, technical and vocational education, industry-linked skills development, and digital literacy. In financial year 2026-2027, priorities for education, skills, and sports, Mr. Speaker, are the following. Next year, government has allocated Uganda shillings 6.66 trillion to further improve education of Ugandans. Priorities will include: number 1, access to quality UPE and USE. Number 2, strengthening STEM and vocational education. 3, improving teacher welfare and training with emphasis on pre-primary teachers. 4, curriculum reform. 5, strengthening public universities and research institutions. And 6, completing critical sports infrastructure for AFCON 2027. Mr. Speaker, beginning financial year 2026-2027, an additional Uganda shillings 568.65 billion has been allocated to enhance salaries for primary school teachers and arts teachers in secondary schools and BTVET institutions. I now come to social protection and inclusive development. Mr. Speaker, the NRM government has over the years ensured economic growth is inclusive. Government continues implementing targeted programs aimed at supporting vulnerable groups and expanding economic participation. The following are some of the achievements. 1, government has continued to support older persons through the Social Assistance Grant for Empowerment SAGE, which has cumulatively reached 489,673 beneficiaries, with a total of Uganda shillings 836.1 billion. In addition, the Special Enterprise Grant for Older Persons has supported 17,245 older persons with approximately Uganda shillings 13 billion. Number 2, under the National Special Grant for Persons with Disabilities, 72,772 beneficiaries have received Uganda shillings 48.5 billion across 171 local governments. 3, the Youth Livelihood Program has financed 24,859 projects benefiting 275,034 youth at Uganda shillings 195.4 billion, while 57,849 youth have benefited from the Youth Venture Capital Fund. 4, the GROW project has extended Uganda shillings 111.1 billion in loans to 4,889 beneficiaries, while the Women Entrepreneurship Program WEB has cumulatively supported 244,805 women with Uganda shillings 153.5 billion. And 5, government has continued to negotiate bilateral labor agreements to protect workers' rights, promote decent work, and expand overseas employment opportunities for skilled Ugandans. Financial year 2026-2027 priorities for social protection. Mr. Speaker, sir, next financial year, government has allocated Uganda shillings 173.55 billion for social protection, which will focus on 1, expanding economic empowerment programs, 2, strengthening labor standards, 3, supporting youth employment initiatives, 4, promoting women's economic participation, 5, enhancing social protection systems, and 6, establishing a robust labor market information system. Mr. Speaker, overall, Uganda shillings 13.56 trillion has been allocated next financial year to invest directly in the people of Uganda through health, education, social protection, and water and sanitation. This investment reflects government's conviction that people are Uganda's greatest asset. Enabler 4, industrial development and manufacturing. Mr. Speaker, nations achieve prosperity not by exporting raw materials, but by transforming them into high-value products. For this reason, government places high priority on industrial development, manufacturing, and value addition. Mr. Speaker, besides government investment in manufacturing under the ATMs already highlighted, the following milestones have been achieved in this financial year. 1. Government continued investing in the development of industrial parks. The aim is to lower investors' establishment and operating costs and drive industrial growth. As a result, the number of formal factories has cumulatively risen from 10,437, of which 6 have cumulatively risen to 10,437, of which 690 are located within industrial parks. 2, government continued capitalizing Uganda Development Corporation to de-risk private investment in critical areas. UDC's capital investment have surpassed Uganda shillings 1.5 trillion, with co-investments across key value chains, including textiles, i.e. fine spinners, agro-processing, i.e. Ageesigika Enterprises Limited, and Bukona Agro-Processing, and Pharmaceuticals, East African Medical Vitals Sanga, Vetchem Limited, and Alphasan Uganda Limited. 3, government through UDC also invested in the local construction sector. UDC invested in Abubakar Technical Services, the Ugandan firm delivering key national roads, including Busunju Chiboga Hoima, 145 kilometers, and Matugasemuto Kapeka, 41 kilometers, among others. UDC also invested in ETAT's construction company, currently constructing the Bujiri Namutumba Road, 24 kilometers, and the Buwenge Kaliro Road, 48 kilometers, among others. 4, government completed the special economic zone at Entebbe International Airport to promote high-value exports. Several firms, particularly in the fresh produce exports and light manufacturing, are setting up operations. 5, continued expansion of presidential zonal hubs, which are tackling youth unemployment by providing practical industrial and vocational skills. To date, 82,790 youth have been trained, and the number of hubs has grown to 28 nationwide. Mr. President, I thank you so much for this initiative. Financial year 2026-2027 priorities for manufacturing and industrial development. Mr. Speaker, government has allocated Uganda shillings 1.03 trillion to the manufacturing program for financial year 2026-2027. Priority interventions include: 1, additional capitalization of UDC to drive industrial development; 2, industrial infrastructure development, particularly industrial parks, including new fully serviced plug and play parks; 3, value addition to agricultural raw materials and minerals; 4, supporting market access for Ugandan manufactured products; 5, strengthening the functionality of special economic zones; and 6, industrial research, including the establishment of regional industrial incubation hubs. Under market access for wealth creators, Mr. Speaker, wealth creators need access to both domestic and export markets. Expanding the domestic market requires higher household incomes and increased purchasing power to stimulate demand for locally produced goods and services. Export growth, on the other hand, requires deeper regional integration to access larger markets within the East African Community, COMESA, and the African Continental Free Trade Area. These opportunities are complemented by preferential and duty-free market access arrangements negotiated with key partners, including the European Union, the United Kingdom, Russia, Serbia, and the countries in the Middle East. To expand both domestic and export markets, government will continue investing in standards, quality assurance, certification, and market intelligence to enhance the competitiveness of Ugandan products and services. To this end, government has so far implemented the following. Number one, strengthen certification services to enhance efficiency. Additional personnel have been recruited and trained to increase capacity of the Uganda National Bureau of Standards to undertake certification, surveillance, and enforcement of standards. Following automation, the turnaround time for import inspection reduced from 3 weeks to 4 hours. Production testing reduced from 30 days to 14 days. And product certification reduced from 180 days to 45 days. 2, decentralization and modernized certification services to enhance access. Construction and equipping of engineering testing laboratories is ongoing and expected to be completed by September 2026. Government also commenced construction of regional laboratories in Mbale, Gulu, and Mbarara. 3, developed 450 standards for products and services and issued permits to 4,500 products. 4, trained 750 micro, small, and medium enterprises in value addition and processing and certified 750 products. 5, completed construction and equipping of an international accredited national meteorology laboratory at Uganda National Bureau of Standards. The laboratory is being used to calibrate equipment used in the National Food Safety Laboratory and other agro-food processing laboratories and industries. 6, commenced operations of the petroleum laboratory in January 2026. Over 40 product samples of petroleum products have since been tested. Mr. Speaker, priority interventions for financial year 2026-27 include 1, development of quality assurance infrastructure, the euro 163.56 million enhancement agricultural production, quality and standards for market access project. 2, strengthening the capacity for development of standards and certification of products and services. 3, completing construction and equipping of the engineering laboratory and continuing construction of regional laboratories. And 4, accrediting private laboratories to increase access. I now come to environmental protection and disaster management. Mr. Speaker, sustainable management and the use of natural resources, land, water, and environment, as well as effective response to climate change, are essential for boosting productivity and value addition. To cushion Ugandans and our economy from climate shocks, government invested Uganda shillings 9.6 billion this financial year in early warning systems, hazard mitigation, and emergency relief items for affected households. Government also invested heavily in water for production facilities to protect our farmers during drought. Mr. Speaker, sir, in order to protect and restore wetlands, government undertook the demarcation of 104 kilometers of wetland boundaries and restored 15,000 hectares of degraded wetlands. A total of 8,319 hectares of graded Central Forest reserves were demarcated alongside 404 kilometers of forest boundaries to enhance the protection and management of forest resources. Mr. Speaker, the safeguard of our environment and adapt to climate change, government has, Mr. Speaker, to safeguard our environment and adapt to climate change, government has allocated Uganda shillings 494.08 billion next financial year. These funds will protect 1.26 million hectares of forest reserves and wetlands, restore 10,000 hectares of degraded wetlands, and demarcate critical river banks and lake shores, particularly along the Nile. We will also upgrade meteorological services and early warning systems to deliver accurate forecasts for agriculture, aviation, and climate monitoring. In addition, Uganda shillings 361.88 billion has been allocated to the contingency fund to strengthen our national disaster response next financial year. I now come to administration of justice. Mr. Speaker, under the administration of justice program, the following achievements were recorded. 1, expanded access to justice with the proportion of districts having complete justice service points rising from 79% in financial year 2020-2021 to 89%. This was achieved by operationalizing new High Court circuits now at 29 and establishing 10 additional magistrates courts now totaling 268, including in the island communities. 2, decentralization of the Court of Appeal is underway in Mbarara and Gulu to improve regional access to appellate justice. 3, judicial capacity has been strengthened with the appointment of additional justices of the Court of Appeal, now 20, and High Court, now 88, along with more magistrates to reduce case backlog and serve high-demand areas. 4, resolution of commercial disputes has improved. Between 2023 and 2025, the judiciary disposed of 38,102 commercial and land cases worth Uganda shillings 14.47 trillion, unlocking capital and boosting economic activity and investment. Promotion of alternative dispute resolution has been scaled up, resolving over 8,000 cases in financial year 2025-2026. Alongside nearly 25,000 small claims matters worth Uganda shillings 19.5 billion. 6, mobile courts have been deployed to hard-to-reach and refugee hosting areas, bringing hearings into communities to accelerate case resolution and improved access to justice. In financial year 2026-2027, priorities for administration of justice, Mr. Speaker, are the following. Uganda shillings 665.55 billion has been allocated under this program for financial year 2026-2027 to number 1, expand access to justice and further decentralize appellate services. 2, recruit and deploy judicial officers. 3, reduce case backlog through alternative dispute resolution and mobile courts. 4, digitize courts, case management and e-filing. 5, strengthen prosecution, forensic services and anti-corruption efforts. And 6, upgrade court infrastructure and circuit operations. I now come to legislation and oversight. Mr. Speaker, sir, during financial year 2025-2026, the 11th Parliament held 34 sittings, passed 18 bills, and concluded concluded 1 petition, passed 29 resolutions, and adopted 22 reports. Most importantly, the turnaround time for enacting legislation has reduced significantly, and I want to congratulate the 11th Parliament upon this achievement. Next financial year, government has allocated Uganda shillings 1.23 trillion to enable Parliament to fulfill its constitutional mandate of legislation, appropriation, oversight, and effective representation. I now come to key implementation reforms. Mr. Speaker, achieving tenfold growth requires more than investment. It requires discipline, it requires accountability, it requires efficiency, and it requires integrity. Government will therefore undertake a comprehensive implementation reform agenda aimed at eliminating waste, corruption, delays, and inefficiency. In this regard, government is implementing a cleanup. This means enforcement of the laws and regulations to ensure institutional effectiveness, leading to improved service delivery and public trust. The specific priorities in the cleanup include: 1, enforcement of budget discipline and accountability. In financial year 2026-2027, going forward, as part of the performance contracts, all accounting officers will sign a budget discipline and accountability charter, which provides for sanctions against breaches of accountability rules in planning, budgeting, and execution of public resources. 2, combating corruption through procurement reforms, digitization, strengthening internal controls and audits, and ensuring transparency to facilitate accountability. 3, continued enforcement of trade order and traffic discipline to promote safe, orderly, and livable cities and urban centers and improve the safety of public transport. 4, strengthening governance, oversight, and performance of state-owned enterprises. 5, strengthening allocative efficiency by prioritizing high-impact investments under the ATMs and the enablers, while eliminating wasteful expenditure. To this end, as guided by His Excellency the President, state-funded celebrations on public holidays will be suspended except functions on religious holidays. Going forward, public holidays will be observed without official ceremonies. 6, centralizing the management of counterpart funding under the Treasury to safeguard funding for priority projects. 7, implement the contributory public service pension fund to attain fiscal sustainability of the management of pension liabilities for government workers. I now come to the financing of the budget for financial year 2026-2027. The financing strategy for financial year 2026-2027. Mr. Speaker, the financing strategy for financial year 2026-2027 seeks to create additional fiscal space to finance government priorities while maintaining debt sustainability. This will be achieved through, number 1, strengthening tax administration and compliance. 2, introducing targeted tax policy measures to increase domestic revenue. 3, mobilizing concessional financing from development partners and international financial institutions. And 4, expanding alternative sources of financing, including public-private sector partnerships, venture capital, innovative instruments such as Sukuk, and listing of commercially viable public enterprises on the stock exchange. Resource envelope. Right Honorable Speaker, the total resource envelope for financial year 2026-2027 is 84,391,743,343,426 shillings. This is detailed as follows. 1, domestic revenues, Uganda shillings 45.96 trillion, of which 40.16 trillion is tax revenue, 4.02 trillion is non-tax revenue, 1.44 trillion is petroleum revenue, and 339.8 billion is local government revenue. 2, domestic borrowing, Uganda shillings 11.97 trillion. 3, domestic debt refinancing is Uganda shillings 13.97 trillion. External borrowing for general budget financing is Uganda shillings 1.22 trillion. And external financing for projects is Uganda shillings 11.27 trillion. Expenditure allocations. Mr. Speaker, a summary of the allocations of the above resources is as follows. 1, wages and salaries, Uganda shillings 9.709 trillion. 2, non-wage recurrent expenditure, Uganda shillings 33.276 trillion, which also includes operational funds for institutions, financing for all wealth creation funds, financing for science and technology investments, grants for education and health, medicines, maintenance of infrastructure, and interest payments, among others. 3, development expenditure, Uganda shillings 22.054 trillion. 4, domestic debt refinancing 13.967 trillion. 5, debt amortization, Uganda shillings 4.181 trillion. 6, domestic debt repayment to Bank of Uganda, Uganda shillings 547 billion. 7, domestic arrears, Uganda shillings 317 billion. And 8, local government expenditure from own revenue, Uganda shillings 339.8 billion. Mr. Speaker, details of the resource envelope and expenditure allocations by vote for financial year 2026-2027 are provided in annexes 1 and 2, respectively, of this speech. The budget for financial year 2026-2027, totaling to 84.39 trillion, has therefore increased by Uganda shillings 2.78 trillion from the revised budget of Uganda shillings 81.61 trillion for financial year 2025-2026. I now come to the tax measures for financial year 2026-2027. Mr. Speaker, sir, let me now highlight the key tax policy measures as approved by Parliament to support domestic revenue mobilization, investment, job creation, and economic growth. Under income tax, Mr. Speaker, Parliament approved the following income tax measures. 1, extension of income tax exemption